Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Are you all ready? Well, very welcome to this afternoon where we will discuss one of life's most important subjects, I'd say. We can't live without it, and we all have a relation, and that is food. And in a couple of minutes, we will have a panel that will help us to discuss this subject, but we will start with some other stuff first. And as you notice, we will try to take this in English because we have English-speaking people in the panel and also in the audience. We will try, and for Jamie, of course. So we will try to keep it in English. And when you ask questions, it's good if you can take it in English. If you don't want to, take it in Swedish, and I will try to translate. But today we are here to discuss, as I said, one of life's most important and essential subjects. The very only thing that actually keeps us alive or not, and that is food. And whether you like spinach or not, whether you think oysters are very exclusive or just not eatable, whether you love meat or whether you think it's the world's biggest climate issue, and whether you love ice cream or if you just think it's just too unhealthy. I know you all have a relation to food. And today we're going to try to be a part of, through the feasibility studies of 55 Degrees North, and with the help of very knowledgeable and engaged people, the job to find out if a culinary center in Skåne would be a possible thing for the future. My name is Malin Wilt Persson, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. I have a background with almost 20 years in different positions in the rural and agriculture industry, but today I run my own business. And for example, doing things like this. My mission today is to guide you through many interesting topics with a panel full of very, very competent, interesting and engaged people. I know that our only problem today will be lack of time. Too many questions and lack of time. And we also hope that all of you here want to participate in the day, not just sitting and listening to it. So feel free to ask questions. Use our breaks. We will take a break in the middle to find people you want to talk to, you find interesting, and so on. So we like to see this afternoon as well, we're all part of a big creative and productive collaboration. And what a perfect place to do that, I'd say. Okay, let's start. Before we start the panel, I would like Frida Tiberin to come up. She's the project leader for 55 Degrees North. And please tell us a bit more about the project. Where are you today?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to see everyone here. Like you know, it has been a very strange year, and we had planned 2 of this type of meeting. The first one should be focused on regional, local actors, and the second one with a more international focus. And we had to cancel the first one in May, and now we're doing it, and we're trying to do it in a responsible way where people can keep distance and so on. And I'm very happy to see everyone here, and like Malin said, take time to talk with each other because everyone here is super interesting. So I hope I will get a chance to talk with everyone. The feasibility study, 55 Degrees North, is financed by the European Regional Development Fund and by the partners, which is Tomelilla Municipality and Kåseholm Slott, and initially also Matrundan Österlen. The objective is to find out if and how we could create a culinary center in Tomelilla in Skåne, and how it could look like. And one part of that is, of course, who should we work with? Who should we partner up with? What should we do with whom? And that's one of the reasons why we have invited so big mixture of people here from all parts of the food industry, so to say, like official people from the municipality, from the region, chefs, restaurants, growers, researchers, you name it, they are here, educators. We are about a bit more than halfway through the feasibility study. So we know a lot more now than we did in the beginning, and it did not take a very straight path. We have learned things on the way. We have had thematic meetings. We have had planned to make a lot of study visits. We made 2. We had to cancel some of them. We created a stakeholder map. I don't know if you've seen on the tables, there are 2 places where we have put out our stakeholder map, and you're welcome to add people to it. If you see organizations or people that are important for this type of initiative, please just write on a post-it note and put it on the stakeholder map so we can add it to it. We made, during the spring, we had a collaboration with Möte and students from the master's program of cultural analysis, applicable analysis at Lund University. They interviewed people from Möte members, food companies, and made a study on what possibilities, what difficulties they saw in collaborating in this issue. And we have also interviewed more people since then. And we're going to have 2 workshops with the schools about how to work with food together with children from kindergarten and up to around 15 years old, högstadiet in Sweden. And we're going to have the second workshop with them next week. So that's a bit where we are right now, and we're also planning a bit longer work meeting to sum up all the input we are getting from everyone who's been contacting us and who we have reached out to and visited. And of course, you can participate in this by giving us your thoughts, and you can do it by adding to the stakeholders map, by talking to me or anyone from the project. We have Jamie and Joachim. We have Eva, who's also part of the team, you can wave. And Daniel, he is in the back. So just talk to us or mail us afterwards. And we also plan to, when this film is finished, we plan to send it out to everyone who's been here so you can share it with your colleagues. And also with a few questions, what you thought or what your thoughts are on this subject. So that's basically what I had to say. And now I'm going to hand over to Joachim and Jamie.
Yep. Yes, you're welcome.
Yes, thanks.
Hey, welcome to Kåseholm. It's great to have you here. It's a perfect setting for Swedes, social distance, I guess. No hugging, but if you want to hug, you can do that. That's fine. So I just want to say it's great, like I said, having you all here. We're very happy to be here today, and we're happy and excited about what we're doing. Jamie will go into more details about the day or your information. I just want to say that I'm going to be the bartender today. So when we have a break, if you want some beer and wine, I'll help you out. If you want to see puppies that are 3 weeks old, Labrador puppies, you can see them as well. If you want to see some other animals that we have here at Kåseholm, there are sheep and goats and chickens and geese and everything, and ducks. I'll be your master and I'll show you around. So I'm just going to let, Malin told you that there's bathrooms in that building. There's 2 bathrooms in there if you need those to use them. And you're welcome to just walk around later on after 4 o'clock when we're done here and check the place out. And if you need some guidance, I'm happy to be there as well. That's all I have to say. Great having you here. Thank you.
I've got that. Hi. I think we all have a unique relationship with food. That's what brought us all here for different reasons. I think what we all can agree on that food has a profound effect on what happens in the world around us. It touches almost everything we can possibly imagine. But what I want to share with you just briefly are 2 personal stories shared by Joachim and myself that describe more specifically why we're here today and why we're so interested in the future of this initiative. When we were in San Francisco, we were quite closely involved with a wildlife conservation group headquartered in San Francisco called Wild Aid. Wild Aid's focus is eradicating the demand for endangered wildlife products. Their primary target markets are, of course, China and India. That's where most of the demand is for animals that are facing extinction or have already become extinct. There was a specific campaign that they proposed regarding shark fins, And they thought that that campaign should actually not start in China or India, but actually start in the United States, in San Francisco. Their goal was to actually change the laws in the state. So the Chinese American community, the Chinese community in the United States is the second largest outside of China. And there's a great deal of consumption of exotic wildlife products, especially shark fin. It's usually consumed during weddings, special occasions, and it's a very high status food. The idea was, why don't we get together some of the best chefs in our region to imagine a substitute luxury product that could replace shark fin soup. They also worked with Yao Ming, who's a very well-known Chinese basketball player, as kind of the celebrity face of this campaign. So we worked with a lot of the local chefs, and they did create these incredible substitutes for shark fin soup. So it was a bit of a grassroots movement, working with local restaurants in Chinatown and across the water in Oakland. In the end, California did pass a ban on the importation and sale of shark fin within about 9 months, which was much faster than we'd expected. Internally, WildAid's projection was that China would then follow with a ban after Hawaii, possibly within 10 years. The ban actually occurred 3 years later. So this was a very, very influential campaign. Commercials were created in Chinese. They were broadcast in the airports in China and all over the major cities, points of transit. So for us, that was a very clear and meaningful experience in the power of food to affect change in an ecological system. Remember, sharks are apex predators. They affect everything beneath. So that was a bit of an eye-opener from a personal point of view. We know that the food system is terribly broken. We know that our soils are degraded, our soils are dying. We know our nutrition is poor. We are exporting our food problem into hospitals. People are very unhealthy. We have issues with all kinds of ecological systems. And that's all quite depressing. But at the same time, the act of buying and eating food is every day an act of optimism. Every day we have the ability to choose something and to make a change. But when we come together, we have much more power to make change on a greater scale. And so that brings me to the idea of place. And what is the importance of place and bringing people together? The bit of the story actually goes back, I think, about 2.5 years ago. I was reading the New York Times, and I read an article about a seed breeder and a chef that were working together to create better tasting food, more nutritious food that was designed to work in a organic system. And they were releasing about maybe 12 different plants or seeds. This company was Row 7, founded by Dan Barber and his research at the Stone Barn Center for Food and Agriculture in New York, which is an amazing center for educational exchanges and teaching kids and teaching young farmers. It has a huge program base. Anyway, I read about these seeds, and I'm like, that sounds really cool. And I was, thinking, I'd like to grow these things. So I was texting Daniel Berlin back there, and I said, well, this sounds pretty cool, but you're very specific about what you want to grow and what you want to eat. What do you think? And Daniel, I think you said, get the seeds, I'm in. And I said, well, I'm not sure what you mean by I'm in. And he said, well, I'm meeting with Dan Barber right now. So Dan actually was sort of working with, conversing with the top chefs in the world. Would they actually be part of this effort to design better food using organic systems, totally not a GMO product at all? So got the seeds, started growing them. And then Daniel invited a lot of other journalists from around the world to come here and to look at what was around us. And Lisa was one of these people. And out of the blue, completely, I had squash on the table in the back kitchen. And Lisa says, this is a pretty cool place. Have you ever heard of Row 7 seeds? And I said, yeah, I'm actually growing them already. This is super crazy. So I showed you the squashes. And you said, I'm going to send this picture to Dan Barber right now. I'm quite good friends with him. And he texted back, where are you? And I think you said, well, this is the kind of place I think he would be looking for to expand the outreach and the research with regard to food systems, not just Row 7 in general, but in general. I think we should all meet. So in the end, we all did meet here. Dan came with his whole team. And we had a very productive set of meetings. Also, Nicholas Carlson from Rosenhaus Trädgård in Stockholm, who can't be here today. But it gave birth to the idea that a place that is immersive enough that you can look to for interaction, and you can actually have that very personal exchange of energy, that is drastically important and very much needed, especially now when we are more isolated than ever with technology and Zoom meetings. You can't replace person-to-person interaction, even with social distancing. I mean, of course, with social distancing, that's possible. Dan very much believes that the immersive environment he's created at Stone Barns, the fact that there's a restaurant there, there's teaching for farmers, there's interaction with chickens, and you see how milk is produced, all of these things bring people together in a way that's quite pleasurable. And in a way, that's kind of what we need. Everywhere around us, there's tragic things happening. The house is burning down. But the act of eating, the fact that the act of interacting with other people can actually give us a new sense of joy. And so that's the power of food and the power of place. And we're here now as a beginning. And I couldn't be more excited. So thank you very much.
Very interesting. But how did you end up here at Kåseholm? Sweden is large.
Joachim has an apartment in Stockholm, and our friend Marta there in the middle came one summer and declared that this is where she was going to move to. She loved it. So we looked at real estate in Gotland. Eventually we looked here in Skåne. But we were online in California the morning we got back, and during our search this kind of popped up. And it just seemed like an obvious next step for us. We had a ranch in the wine country where we invited a lot of chefs and people in food and ecologic systems. It was a fun place to be. It was a magical place to be, surrounded by vineyards, but a wildlife environment. But we didn't have a permanent building. And so when we saw this, we scrolled down, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of buildings there. We think we should be there. Yeah. It's kind of simple like that.
And I know someone said before we started that they had been here a couple of years ago, and it's totally different now.
Yeah.
So you did a lot of work.
Yeah, and we have some friends, Mats and Eva Hansson from the White Guide, and they were telling us like your plans, and they came here the first summer we came, and they said, oh, you should find a good chef, and we know a very good chef around here. His name is Daniel Berlin. And we said, who's that? Well, he's very famous. Blah, blah, blah. So then we contacted Daniel and said, like, we need to work together. And so he came over here initially, and I think he was like, yeah, sounds great. We have a plan. This mechanical workshop is going to become like your place or kitchen, creative kitchen. We're going to make this into a gallery, blah, 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 blah. And he said, yeah, sure, great. Then 6 months after, he came back and saw that we were not just talkers, we were doers as well. And I think we're pretty proud of what we've done so far in these almost 3 years' time. So thank you. No, it's fun. It's fun to have a group like you guys here, and we do events here. We have gallery artists, different artists. We have music. We have some weddings, and it's just we want to create like a community, a really good place that you feel welcome to and you love being here. We're working hard on that thing, and I think we will never be done because we've finished one project. It's another thing coming up, never be finished. But it's fun. It's like a nice way of living. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So that's why we're
and
here.
you said puppies, beer, wine,
beer,
other
wine,
animals,
puppies,
a castle.
goats,
Can we
cheese,
stay like a week or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. Good. Thank you very much. Well, Jamie, I will ask you to sit down at the panel,
Okay.
and I think you're going off. Yes. Well, then it's time for our first panel, and except for Jamie, we will ask Liza Abben to come up. And we will help you with the technique. And Måns Nordmark over here. And then Sara Hjelberg. And a round of applause, I think. So Lisa, please tell me, who are you? Tell us.
Yes. Hi, I'm Lisa Abend. I'm a journalist. As you can probably tell from my accent, and I should also take this moment to thank you for being so linguistically tolerant and making the switch on our behalf. I'm an American journalist, but I'm based in Copenhagen. I write primarily about European politics and culture within the world of culture with an emphasis on food. For various American media, including Time Magazine and Vanity Fair.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Måns, who are you?
My name is Måns Nordmark, and basically I love food. Very simple. And I have the fortune to be the 6th generation to grow up in our family farm in Söderviding on the west side of Skåne. And we are basically vegetable growers. And the thing I've been doing for the last about 10 years has basically been focusing on making it easier for everybody to eat vegetables by shopping vegetables, by cooking vegetables, and so on. And basically today, my clear ambition is to basically bring great food to everybody and believe that the vegetables is the way of doing it.
Good. And Sarah?
Yes, my name is Sarah, and I come from a company called Bombio. I work with something called circular farming, which means that we take organic waste and turn it into new products by using high technology farming methods. I also love food, which is why it's so great to be here. And even though I have a lot of technology base with my work, I'm also an aspiring market gardener, as I just bought a farm, so I'm in both sides, and have a background in horticultural management and economics, and I'm also signing up for the puppy list, by the way.
Well, thank you. And I think loving food is why we're all here today, so it's a good thing in common. Well, I think I'm going to start with, we have a lot of questions, not a lot of time, so we'll see what we will get through. But I think I will start with you, Liza. You're a food journalist, or you write about a lot more than food, but food as well. And you've been writing about food many years. How would you say that the interest for food has changed over the years, and why?
I think, I mean, this is something that you've touched on, and Jamie, you've touched on, that the role of food in our lives has expanded exponentially. It's not just sustenance. It's not just an expression of caring. It's not just nutrition. It's not even just taste. It's become entertainment. It's become art. It's become a form of creative expression. It's become a business opportunity. And with that, you see a change in the role of the people in charge of producing it. So they have become seen in some cases, whether we're talking about chefs or even in some cases, whether we're talking about farmers, they're seen as they can become celebrities, they can be seen as artists as well, and they can also be seen, and this is where I think this institution comes in, they can be seen as agents of change, as activists, as intellectuals, as people trying to make the world a better place. And that, I think, is something that was not the case for food 20 years ago, for example.
That's interesting. And how about you, Måns? You come from a farmer's family. I think you said you're the sixth generation. How did it change? Can you see changes for the way you produce, or the people asking for your food over the years? Has it changed because of what Lisa says?
Yeah, I agree. I think so. And from our perspective, I think we have basically, more or less, as you were into before as well, from row 7, we've gone from agriculture as really you grow and you eat directly at your farm, then you've grown to bigger and bigger scale farming, and then from my perspective now it's starting to turn again, maybe not into smaller, but the big players need to take responsibility, and we need, to do something to change the food cycle and the way we eat. So from my perspective, I think we as a company and me as a person today feel much more responsible for how we can develop eating and how we can look at eating compared to 5 or 10 years ago.
And how about you, Sarah? The thing you do in your company is very close to food every day, and do you think you could have done what you do today 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or is the interest, this is the right time for the kind of growing you do?
Absolutely the right time, and I think, as you said also, that the big players has a bigger responsibility, or they have more power to change things. I think that has also given smaller players like us the opportunity to actually be doing what we do. But definitely in Sweden anyways, it would not have been the time 10 years ago to do what we do today. But the market and people in general are really ready and really curious about learning about food in totally different ways today, I think. And we can also see the interest in, for example, what we grow. People are more curious about new tastes and all these things, which is incredible and also really fun as a farmer to be able to play around with and also experiment and develop ourselves within the process.
That's good. I was reading about, if we stay a little while, about food and what we think and how we like food or not. I was reading at your website, Jamie, and it says that you are explorers, serial collaborators, and bon vivant. How did food become such an important topic in your life, or has it always been like that? Or
probably two different perspectives. First, my family business was restaurants in the United States, a kind of restaurant that no longer really exists in the States. This is before fast casual became a thing. We had restaurants that were serving, we had a capacity of 300 people, huge kitchens, 120 employees for each restaurant. It was a gigantic enterprise. High stress for our family, traditional approach to food, although we had the first quite large salad bars in the United States where they were introduced in the 70s. So that was a bit of innovation, but it really wasn't about taste per se. It was a business. For me personally, my interest in food probably goes toward that adventure part or the bon vivant part. I lived in Asia for a good part of my younger adult life, Japan predominantly, later Hong Kong and Singapore. And traveling was so much fun because you could try different tastes. It was food safari before anyone called it that. For me, that was the most exciting thing every day, was to cook in a new country or to discover a new ingredient. When I was a lawyer in Japan, for me, cooking was the only tactile, physical thing I could do every day. If I was writing contracts, I felt disconnected from the world around me. But coming home, even though I lived alone, cooking something new or trying something new gave me a sense of connection to the world I was living in. So I think food for me is connection.
And just a thought now, and a question to you, Lisa. During these Corona times, do you see that the way we act around food or think about food or cook ourselves, can you see a change during this time because we cannot travel the way we did and so on?
I don't think there's any doubt for anyone with an Instagram account. I'm sure yours, like mine, filled with people making their own sourdough and maybe growing some herbs on their windowsill. I think it did awaken in a lot of people, at least initially, this realization, or at least a fear, I may not be able to rely on the places where I have gotten food from before. And often those places were quite distanced from me, whether they're supermarkets or restaurants. And I think that as this kind of survival instinct kicked in with people, there was a very kind of natural and immediate response, which was, I better figure out how to do this on my own.
I find it kind of interesting because I can see that the interest for food has changed in Sweden because of two things the last year. And I don't know what you said about that, Måns, but one is now the corona, and the other is that we had a very bad draft 2 years ago that I know made a lot of people turn to the Swedish food. I don't know if you agree, Måns? Do we need like catastrophes to get the interest?
It could be a way of starting, but I don't see that as the way of, or not to change to what I would consider as a much better future. But it could be a start. But I mean, besides that, obviously, then you need the entrepreneurs and the believers to actually do the change after that, and to make those fears or whatever become so we're not fear anymore, basically.
But I want to hang on to what we call, we're touching the sustainability question here, I think. And when we talk about food, there's a lot of talk about sustainability. But what is sustainability to each and every one of you? Because I think we all have different we think of different things when we think about it. Anyone who wants to start? Sarah?
Well, for me, sustainability is not, I think often you get, when it comes to food and sustainability, you also tend to get stuck to the environmental aspect of it. But there's also a lot of social aspects and also the economic factor, of course, that it needs to be sustainable for everyone. And I think that sustainability as a general concept, food has such a big part of it, because first of all, it affects the environment a lot and all of this, but it's also it can help to bring the cultural aspects and just bring it all together, a place where we can actually connect and talk about sustainability together. But for me, it's something that will last for a really, really long time, of course. And but then also, I think innovation should be a part of it as well, definitely.
Jamie?
It's a hard question. That's why it's a really good question. A lot of you who I know that I hate that word, sustainability, because I think it's brandished about rather recklessly to defend or to demonize an idea. I think sustainability should focus on the idea of resilience. That doesn't mean there's one answer. When we're talking about food, the intersection of sustainability and food, specifically, we have to look at soil health. Soil sequesters carbon, that impacts climate change. Climate change impacts migration, mass migration, and refugee crises. So in that sense, food is a national security issue. At the same time, I think that we need to be open to technological innovations. I mean, food is a technology. It was since we started putting food in rows and started creating aqueducts. I think we need to be open to the innovation. Awareness is probably the starting point, just to understand what are we looking at? What are these systems that we're proposing? Let's look more deeply than just saying it's a sustainable system. We just need the deeper conversation. I think that's the foundation of sustainability, is really being educated.
Good.
I would say, yeah, building on what everyone here has said so far, that I think the word sustainability initially was put forward as an alternative to what was perceived as harm, the harm that was being done first to the planet environmentally, and then, as Sarah said, it expanded in some ways to address the harm that was being done to human actors as well. And as things happen in modern society, that term became co-opted as, in some cases, as a branding opportunity, or sincerely just becoming a little more superficial as a way of sort of signaling good intentions in any of these fields. But I would suggest that maybe the way of a good way of thinking about it now is that not only is it about addressing harm, a way of countering harm to the environment and to humans, but that maybe we should be thinking about it as a force for regeneration, that we're not just stopping the damage that we're doing to the planet, to the soil, to workers, to growers, to producers, but we're actually trying to regenerate nature at the same time regenerate human community.
Måns, I know that when we talked over the phone and talked about sustainability, if we continue on that to hear what you say as well, you were talking about sustainability and the most effective way to get to the consumer. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, one of the major things I've been thinking about in the last couple of years has really been about, looking at the whole food system and the sustainability of a food system, and how and where we are creating waste, and especially from the consumer side, where do we create value? And what we were discussing and what we are internally discussing a lot within my company and within my family is basically what would be the ideal way to go from the fields, from the farmers to the consumers, to not create any extra waste on the way. Obviously, there is waste from the raw materials, from the actual food, but in my case, I sell rucola in plastic bags. Can we avoid the plastic bags? Can we avoid the crates we are bringing the food to the shop? Can we avoid the waste of the salad at home? Can we avoid the waste of the salad on plate? And how would be the most efficient way of actually bringing the food from the fields to the consumer who actually will eat the product? And that, I think, is a very interesting question for the food industry, and a question I haven't heard much discussion about. It's basically just a discussion that, at least what I hear is, okay, restaurants and food service is taking much market from retailers, and what is the reason? Yeah, it's more convenient, they have a better story to tell. But what would actually be the most efficient way? That is a question we are trying to work with a lot, and especially then both as growers and as an industrial player.
That's any response to that, or it's an interesting thought to see that the whole line in a way.
I think definitely for a company as we produce our products right next to the consumer, either if it's a store or if it's the actual, well, mostly if it's a store or a warehouse or whatever, we place our containers right next to it, and then we actually grow it like 10 meters away from where it's sold. So it's definitely, I really recognize that issue with bringing the food and the waste along, and that's something that we talk a lot about too, because for us that's our like main unique selling point, the fact that we're so close to the consumer that we don't actually have the waste that would be from if you transport it from a farm to somewhere, or with different stops we transport it direct to we like walk with it to the consumer. So I think that's a really, really also important question to address, and it's really hard, but I think that's also when actors like ourselves should collaborate also with more bigger players and see where we can meet and where we can learn from each other to minimize the waste and effects of it.
I'm thinking, and this might be to Lisa or Jamie or every one of you, but do you think that Sweden has a role to play in the food discussions when if we see Sweden as a part of the global community, and do we need, what kind of more international influences do you think we need, and what can we influence, if you understand?
You're the one who lives here.
I mean, I was going to toss that potato to you, but I mean, we all are aware of the Nordic Food Manifesto and the profound effects that has had on the food discussion globally. Denmark has embraced it very much. Sweden has. I would say if Sweden can play a particular role globally, it has a quite good reputation in many aspects of social life and social welfare. So it has an authenticity. It seems like a country that people would believe what it says. It believes what it's trying to promote. It is sometimes looked to as sort of the big brother of the Scandinavian countries, so it could take a leadership role in that sense. But it seems that Denmark has really sort of been pioneering the most, or is that, I don't know.
I would have to agree, yes. And I've been thinking a lot about why that is and how it came about. And of course, I mean, the short answer is Noma, right? I mean, that's that's the sort of myth of it, the narrative of it, that, you had Klaus Meyer and René Redzepi come together and try and, as they put it, to create a cuisine in a country that didn't really have one, using the local ingredients and tapping into local culture. But I don't think that that's the whole story or really anywhere close to it, because the idea that there was no cuisine there is of course not true. And there is. Sweden has a very rich cuisine and a rich culinary history, and as did Denmark. And maybe they got lost, or maybe they were passed over in favor of more of foods that were perceived as being more modernized or more sophisticated, more industrialized, more convenient, cheaper, all of those things. But it was always there. And now I think the exciting moment that we're living in is that there's a real energy and drive to figure out a way of not just of like bringing the past back, but taking what we know, using modern technology, innovation, creativity, and really kind of energizing the resources that have always been there.
But do you think we're just more modest in Sweden? I mean, we don't brag a lot. Do you think we should brag more?
Well, you have some Michelin stars, I hear. No, it's very. I mean, I've had some of the most memorable meals of my life in Sweden, hands down. I think maybe what has made a difference in part is it's not Denmark, it's Copenhagen, right? I mean, what has made a difference is the concentration of very highly internationally acclaimed restaurants within a relatively small city. And that, I think, did propel it internationally. But I would also, especially right now, during this pandemic, urge a little caution there, because, yes, it's true. Copenhagen restaurants, the Copenhagen culinary scene, did attract a tremendous amount of international attention. It did bring tourists flocking in, coming just to eat. I think it was something like, in 2018, there were 10 million tourists to Denmark, and a full 1.3 of them had come specifically to go to a restaurant that they had in mind. Which in some ways is great. It creates all of these opportunities. It has ripple effects. You see more restaurants. You see them spreading outside of Copenhagen. You see support for farms and agriculture. You see new kinds of innovation. And you see a lot of creative people from other parts of the world wanting to come and live there, just to be part of that sort of fervor that's happening. But I would argue that a lot of that development was based and counted almost entirely on international attention, without actually necessarily paying proper attention to the local community and the local audience that, especially in a time of trouble, would help get you through this. And I know, in talking to chefs, including talking to Daniel here, that sometimes local audiences felt like these places weren't for them. That these restaurants, they couldn't get a booking there. It was too, it was. They knew they had to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning to be on their computers for a booking 6 months down the line. They couldn't just drop in. The language of communication was in English. It wasn't in Swedish. It wasn't in Danish. And all of the media attention that was so, kind of geared to creating celebrities out of these chefs might not necessarily resonate with local culture, and might actually provoke some skepticism. So I think one of the challenges here is not just to depend on that international audience, but to really kind of foster the same enthusiasm and support and growth and outreach with your local community as well.
And have the ambassadors from your local who travels and talk about it.
Yes.
and so on.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Well, we're touching the subject about cooperations and collaborations with different kind of chefs and restaurants and growers and stuff. But before I continue with the next topic, are there any questions right now? then we have to ask Britt-Marie to stand up and talk in that one.
Is it? Yeah, it's on. Hi, I'm Britt-Marie, and I'm the CEO of this municipality that we're right in right now. And you touched something, Lisa, that I've been sitting here thinking about listening to you. And I'm curious, what advice would you all give us to really make this a hopefully bigger scale project? It's quite small right now, though it is kind of global. But we're also in a situation in life with the corona and everything that has made me think, is this really the time for the small scale businesses' revenge? You said something about that. and I would like to get some advice. How should we continue? What are your thoughts?
Good question.
I think that's a really great way of putting it. It's the small businesses is revenge, because in the same way as I think I mentioned before, this kind of survival instinct kicked in. I think we also kind of reached. That was just this natural inclination to reach the community around us during a time that seemed a little scary, and so that, coupled with the fact that international supply chains are not reliable, or have proven not necessarily to be reliable, I think it does create a moment in which people can take advantage of that. But I think it means being a little being a little less driven by what has been taken as a marker of success or acclaim or recognition, which sometimes tends to be the international scale, and being willing to turn away from that and say, let's say in the case of a restaurant, maybe those Michelin stars, maybe the world's 50 best list, maybe that's not where I need to direct my attention right now. Maybe I need to direct it at how can I get the people who are physically around me to be as excited about my restaurant as that foodie who traveled from Tokyo or from San Francisco and spent their whole holiday and Instagrammed every restaurant that they went to. How do I generate that same kind of enthusiasm? And I think the answer is your community best. So tap into what matters to them. They probably don't care so much about whether a business or a restaurant is on the cover of a magazine that's published in New York. They might care a lot about whether you have a kind of open house for your local community or whether you communicate with them in their own language.
Yeah, and I'm thinking then, Jamie, what do you think about that? Being here as a local, and still international, I mean,
that is the definition in many ways of a more sustainable system. Because we realized in this pandemic that transportation makes us very vulnerable. Tourism, we're vulnerable there as well. So creating that kind of strength locally or sort of regionally would definitely be a more stable foundation for these kinds of initiatives. I think the challenge there is that a lot of the actors, especially the local actors, have worked in isolation for so long, and sometimes their focus is sustenance sustainability. Well, can I get through this next year? Can I repeat what I did last year because that's what I know? I think that the trick is to innovate within a region. How do they see that new possibilities might be something that's good for them, whether they could adopt, or for instance, a new approach to moving food from the grower to the consumer. I think that, and again, it comes back to the education and back to the awareness. I think that's where we have to start. If you simply, threw out to the wind, what does everyone want in this region, a lot of them would just not write back to you. They're not interested in the conversation. I think you have to kind of create an awareness. Outreach is critical.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think all of you are saying that you need the influences from the outside, but you also need to act locally. And I think that takes, then you need other people to cooperate with or collaborate with. And I know when I talk to you, Måns, that you have a lot of collaborations with the university, chefs, Jamie and Joachim and so on. Why is that important to you in what you do?
Because we want to find new ways of serving a lot of people or everybody with great food. So for us, what has been very clear over the last couple of years has been that going from an ambition to grow as a company to going to an ambition that is driven from a purpose. And when we have turned the business from just a way of making more kilos or making more money to a purpose, then we have also been able to collaborate with much more people. With universities, talking with Jamie and Joachim out here, for example, talking with restaurants, talking with completely new ways of talking with people, because they understand our purpose, they understand what we want to do, and they can contribute to that in a very good way. So for us, that has been really relieving, and I think that's the way forward as well. Referring to your question, that I think a purpose and a belief is really the key. The influence, as you said, could be international, could be from wherever, but the people who is actually close by, they need to believe that purpose, and then they will tag along for sure. And that we see in our company, going from from many persons working, co-workers working with me. I mean, they have been there doing a good job, but when we have started to work for a more clear purpose, the innovation speed and the speed of, and also the interest of all the co-workers has been tremendous, and it's great change. So for me, that's been a new way of looking at basically everything.
So
And,
it also makes you a better employer who can take care of get people to stay, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's also much easier to hand out responsibilities, because they know why we're doing a thing, and they then it's much better ideas coming from basically everywhere, and much more ideas are aligned with the actual purpose when they know it, obviously.
That's very interesting. And how about you, Sarah? I guess you have a lot of corporations too, because you don't have all the techniques yourself and so on, but...
No, exactly. We buy our technology from a variety of places, and collaborations is so important for us in all different, both in the supply chain, but also out to the consumer and places like this, because I mean that's where we can, like, our expectations can meet and our curiosity can grow. We have learned so much from our collaborations with chefs and bigger corporations and local stores and just local people in general, because there's no way in just us sitting as a company and trying to find out what everybody else wants if we're not going to ask them and if we're not going to, like, talk to them, and that they will have to feel that they're a part of it. And especially with a modern technology as we're using, there's also a bit of a skepticism. So we really need those collaborations to break through, because there is a skepticism when walking into a 40-foot container that's like looks like a spaceship. People are like, can we really eat this? Is it safe? And just to talk to them and make them understand and make us understand that what we want to achieve, and have a vision for that, but also create the vision together. And I think, tapping into your question again, I think making a region feel like a success instead of like one place in one region. Imagine creating this region feeling like a success and having all these different places instead of just having one place where there's international influence coming from. Instead, they want to go to that place. They want to meet the people. They want to feel a part of the community. I think that's what the aim should be, or the vision should be, because that's how you're going to create the long-run sustainability, both within your own community and with international people coming in.
Good, thank you very much. We're going to start the second panel soon. And as you see, we have the panel number 1, and we added a few people. And I will do a presentation of them a bit later. But we have 2 people who couldn't make it that comes from very, very interesting organization. And the one is Row 7, and the other one is Rosendals Trädgård. So because they couldn't make it, we have 2 movies to show. So we're going to start with 2 shorter films, and I will let Jamie present a bit more about them.
Yes, the idea when we conceived of the 2 larger events here for this year, now in September, our plan was that Dan Barber and his team would be here to meet all of you and to present some of the ideas for the future of this collaboration. Of course, that was the before, and they cannot be here today. Dan is transitioning his restaurant at Blue Hill to a chef in residency program, so he's quite busy this week. So instead, Charlotte, the CEO, has sent a greeting to us with a challenge.
So a big hello from New York. I'm so happy to be joining you for this conversation that feels more necessary than ever. This year, it feels like we have seen all of the vulnerabilities of our food system exposed. And it's a moment that requires that we ask ourselves, how can we reimagine this? How can we build a more resilient and a more just food system that's going to meet the challenges of the future? And that is not an easy question to answer. I know it's a lifelong undertaking, and I know it's also a question that you are working through today, and I hope that I can add some spark to that conversation. Our team at Row 7 was gathering recently, and we talked about the fact that if there is one prescription, one guiding principle to building resilience, it is diversity. The biological diversity of our farms and our ecosystems, the diversity in our diets, the diversity among our community stakeholders. And that is really the guiding principle of our work at Row 7. That work took root about 10 years ago in the kitchens of Blue Hill Restaurant with our co-founders, Chef Dan Barber and Michael Mazurek, who is an organic vegetable breeder. And we realized in those conversations that if you are looking for the most delicious, most sustainable ingredients, you have to begin not in the kitchen or even in the soil of your farm, but you have to dial it back all the way to plant breeders, to the people who are developing our seeds and in doing so, writing the original recipes for our food. So today, Row 7 brings together chefs and farmers and plant breeders to develop more nutritious and delicious varieties of vegetables designed for organic systems. And you would hope that that was an obvious idea, but those are not the priorities of our modern seed system. As we have reached out to dozens of plant breeders across the country and across the world, we hear them say the same things. They see, on the one hand, the energy and excitement of the farm-to-table movement, and on the other, they experience this rapidly consolidating seed system, which is really in service of commodity and chemical-driven agriculture. So our world seeds, these blueprints for the future of food, are in the hands of just a few multinational chemical companies for the most part. So we have this disconnect. We have people who are demanding food that is flavorful and nutritious and of its place, and recognizing that those things should be accessible to everyone. We have farmers who are seeking out more diversity and more resilience on their farms in the face of a changing climate. and you have a seed system that is less and less incentivized to deliver those things. So that was the foundational challenge of row 7, and it's a challenge that I would pose to all of you today, which is, how do we contribute to the development of diversity that serves eaters and growers for the future? And then how do we bring that into the mainstream and make it accessible? And I think that the answer to both of those things begins with community, and it begins with the power of a place like the one you are standing in today. We began a conversation with Jamie and Joachim well over a year ago because we shared this vision for a place that was a point of connection around the future of food. And I know that is why you are all there today. And that is where we see so much excitement and opportunity to make change. It is in re-empowering people, farmers, cooks, eaters, educators, students, scientists, everyone who is in that room as joint stakeholders and participants in building a better food system. So that is a very hopeful vision for the future. We are grateful to be collaborators in that vision, and especially grateful to all of you for helping to create the framework for it today.
Hej! Hej hej! Välkomna till stiftelsen Rosendals trädgård. Jag heter Klara Palerius.
Och jag heter Märta von Esse. Och jag är tillsammans med Klara trädgårdspedagog här på Rosendals trädgård.
Ja, och vi jobbar i en verksamhet som heter Lek, odla, väx. Som har funnits här i 8 år, sedan 2012. Och vi har ju främst jobbat med förskolebarn och barn i den lägre skolåldern som har följt odlingsåret och kommit till oss för att uppleva trädgård, uppleva arbetet, smakerna, kontrasterna i trädgården under säsongerna. Och vi har byggt upp dem med 6 stycken träffar som barnen får delta i, där olika saker händer. Nu är vi mitt uppe i september, skörden. En viktig tid med smaken framför allt, där grönsakernas roll blir tydliga.
Ja, och färgerna och insekterna faktiskt också, för de är ju med här i trädgården, och barnens sinnliga upplevelse är oerhört betydelsefull för att de ska få med sig någonting som förkroppsligar hela den här, nu jag säger upplevelse hela tiden, men det är ju det handlar om, att de får jobba på riktigt med att så, plantera, skörda, lägga kompost, och att de naturligtvis får smaka då väldigt mycket också. Och sen att vi varvar det med mycket lek. Vi lägger kompost av små ruttna tomater och kolaklubbor och pannkakor som de förvandlas till, och vi kokar grytor på alla goda grönsaker och glassar och sånt som de föreställer. Så mycket sång och lek, och sen det här verkliga arbetet. De är små trädgårdsmästare när de kommer hit till Rosendal.
Ja, vi vill ju skapa förutsättningar för barnen att själva möta den här platsen, så vi försöker att lotsa dem framåt. Vi har ju en egen planering som vi ganska snabbt lägger åt sidan, för vi vill att barnen ska vara med och forma innehållet. Och det känns väldigt viktigt, tillsammans med att vi är lekfulla, precis som dem. Att vi vågar kliva ur den här vuxna rollen och faktiskt förvandlas till en fågel ibland, eller testa hur det känns att vara en pumpa som ligger på komposten. Det kan vara ganska roligt ibland. En viktig ingrediens och avväpnande, ska jag säga. Det skapar ett klimat både mellan oss vuxna och barnen, men också inom gruppen. Vi ser att många barn, och hör av pedagogen att många barn får en annan roll i gruppen här. Någon som är tillbakadragen i vanliga fall kanske får kliva fram och hålla de där dagmaskarna som någon annan inte vågar. Så det blir en möjlighet för barnen också att utveckla nya sidor av sig själv.
Well, thank you. Well, these 2 films about diversity of seeds and community, and how to explore food as a child. And that takes us into panel number 2, which is about knowledge and education. But before we start with the questions, and we're going to talk both about how how row 7 works together with you, I think, or ideas about it, and we're also going to talk about how we can use food as an educational ground for children. But first of all, we have 3 new participants in the panel. So before we start, I'd like you to just say something short about who you are, and I will let Christer start.
Thank you. My name is Christer Yrjas, and I'm here mainly today because I'm a politician here in Tomelilla municipality. I am the chairman of the political nämnd. I don't know what the committee. Thank you. Committee is a good word. Who has responsibility for social welfare and education. We work with the question in one committee. And when I'm not a politician, I work at Hushållningssällskapet, which is an advisory organization here in Skåne and all of Sweden, working with agriculture questions.
Thank you. And Heather?
Yes, so my name is Heather, and I am working as a gardening educator, very similar to what they were mentioning here in the video at Rosendals Trädgård. But in Malmö, we have a adventure playground. I'm trying to translate it into English now. Adventure playground and a garden in Sofielund in Malmö, where kids come from kindergarten and after school and school with their teachers, and they get to play and build and also experience the garden over the season. And we're also open to the public during sommarlov.
Summer vacation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And Edith?
Hi everyone. You can hear me right? Good. It's a very different experience from here than there. My name is Edith Salaminen, and what to call myself? It's always my heart starts to beat because I don't have one good title. But I have a background in social anthropology of food and holistic gastronomy, and that probably says nothing to most of you, but it's okay. You will understand, hopefully. What it means that I look at food as a sort of living thing in society that affects our surroundings, us as people, our countries, our municipalities, our families, pretty much everything. And I'm really interested in seeing how we as people act and behave around food, and how then food behaves with us in return. So yeah, I guess that's a good.
Yeah, good. Sure. And I'm actually going to start with a question to you, because I know that when I talk to you over the phone, you said food affects everything everywhere we go. Can you explain that? You said a little bit about it, but a bit more.
Yeah, I'm pretty biased because of my study background. I'm taught to look at food and to analyze food, and how it really makes these traces everywhere around us, and it's I usually laugh when I'm on a holiday somewhere new, and I can't help but see how the sort of garbage trucks go around, and where the food stores are placed, and what time do people eat, and which kind of commercials are there around which attracts us to certain types of foods when it comes to different countries. So for me, really, it's almost like I have this extra set of lenses on, where I see food as these little creatures around all the time. That sounds like I'm crazy, but sometimes I feel that, like these little trolls, these could be all little agents of food doing various things around us, and if you would talk to me for a little longer, I think that I could convince you that food is really everywhere and in everything. And if it's not a direct link, it's an indirect link. And if that indirect link is not obvious, I can convince you otherwise.
That's good. And I'm thinking that you also said, and I'm asking this because I'm trying to get us into this education thing, but you also said that it's easier to talk about food with kids than with adults. Why is that?
Well, it's partially it's the thing about age and habits, and the further we go on in our lives and the older we get, the harder it is to break habit. That's a classic. We all know this. And kids, it's really interesting because when kids have a lot of likes and things that they don't like when it comes to food, and they think that they are really set. Like, I don't like broccoli, or I really love ketchup, or I whatever, and you start off that way, but very soon you realize that they are very easily to mold, and it really depends on how you present your ideas and your perspective, and they're so much smarter than we give them credit for. And I have just become a mom myself, and I'm already amazed how my half-a-year-old baby is able to, become whatever, really. And it's and I get really fascinated every time I work with kids. It is you can of course work with adults as well, but we are so aware of ourselves, and we're so aware of how we behave and what do we choose, and how that then reflects on who we are as people, and kids don't have that. They're just so open and transparent, and they're not afraid of saying one thing first and then taking it back 5 minutes later, whereas we as adults, we tend to feel shame, or we are anxious or stressed or whatever, and we're really adults. I mean, I guess we all recognize this in a way, what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I had a question here where I was thinking that, of course, the customer is a very powerful influencer when we choose what we buy or what we eat or whatever. But then, as an adult, we say one thing and then we do another. I mean, we say, oh, I have to buy sustainable grown vegetables, but then I take the cheapest one from somewhere else in the world and so on. So I'm thinking that if we want to change that, do we start with the children? And now I'm asking you, Heather, because I know, what do you see when you start with the education of the children? Is that where we start?
Definitely. I mean, I think what experiences we have as children affect us so deeply and profoundly as adults. And you can see it when you start analyzing the generations of what has been happening paralleled. For example, when the school gardens were more common in Sweden, what happened with those children when they grew up, and how was their relationship to food compared to my generation? That I grew up in the city, and my proximity to food growing was very far, and it's as an adult that I start realizing this, and I feel that's also where I'm so passionate about working with kids and gardening, because it's like I wish that I had that as a child. So yeah, it's extremely important, and also of course working with adults and this aspect, but working with the kids, because within a flash it's going to be them, and they're going to be ruling the world, and we need to make sure that they get the right input. Yeah.
I'm thinking it because it's, as you said, we know that it's easy to affect the younger ones, but how do you think we can reach? I know that you work with the families as well. Can you say something about that? How you do that?
Yeah. So mainly we work towards school groups and stuff, but once a week we have a group family gardening, we call it, and so the families get a little plot, and they're supposed to grow together and share, and then we eat together, and we meet once a week from April to October, so we get to see the garden and it's changing colors and shapes and the different processes of what it means, like in the beginning of the season. Then you put the seeds, and then and also seeing the parents interacting with their kids and explaining to their kids what is happening here. Try this. We grew this, like, and the kids can be skeptical to some vegetables, like, ew, there's dirt on it. It's dirty. But no, like, and just having that conversation, and it's really beautiful to see families gardening together. So yeah, it's a privilege to work with what I do. Yeah.
I'm thinking what you do and what you do. Do you use your technology with schools today, or is that a possible
We're not doing it today exactly, but we have plans to do so. We're talking to some municipalities about it, and I absolutely love what you're saying, and I think it's so important. And with our type of technology, that we can actually put down a container that has all the same aspects, and you can put it down anywhere where there's electricity and water. We've had this talk to different municipalities to actually have it on a schoolyard and having the kids grow with us and actually produce the food to the school, because you can get that much produce, so we could actually, depending on the size of the school, but sufficient amounts. And also with technology to integrate, because technology is also such an important part of today, and to create a bridge between farming and food with technology, and show how those can work together, and that you can basically use it in most subjects in school or whatever. And to create that can be such an incredible opportunity for the kids to not only learn where food can come from, but also to develop analytical skills and use technology. So it's definitely something that we are working with or working towards.
When I talked to you over the phone, we talked about how the school can influence what the kids learn about food and food systems and what they don't teach them. And we ended up talking about, domestic science, we called hemkunskap. And you said there has to be a big change in how we have those lessons. Can you say something about that?
I moved to Malmö and to Sweden in 2016 after I had spent 4 months in California, in Berkeley, doing career development program at the Edible Schoolyard. I don't know if you have heard of this, but if you haven't, it's definitely something you should look at. And I came to Malmö hoping that I could do something similar. I'm not an expert on the gardening part, but I had ideas how I could share that with other people who have that knowledge. But I was really interested in seeing how you take the kids away from their normal school environment, and especially these home economics classrooms, which very often aren't even anymore kitchens. When I was a child, it was a semi sort of kitchen that was badly equipped, and it was a bit smelly, and it was not an inviting space. And this subject matter has constantly become less and less relevant to what's happening around us in the world, but also it has become less and less important in the school curriculum. And some schools don't even really do it. It is there on paper, but when you want to visit the school and see how a home economics class is done, all of a sudden there's a math teacher there who has given the kids some sort of exercises on how to do a monthly budget, and the kids are all on their phones and they're bored to death. And this makes me really, really sad. I then got a hold of this book, which is still valid. I can't remember the exact year when this book was printed, but I think it was 2000 something. But like it's very outdated. Things have really changed since, and I went into the index and tried to see if there is the word food systems or sustainability or environment and food, and it was awful. There was, I think, this long chapter on sustainability, and it was this like 1990s thinking of sustainability, sustainable development, what it means for the world. And I was really sort of like, what to do here? Because it's really hard to, especially in the Nordic countries, to go in and change school curriculums. Like these are big political decisions that are way beyond my reach, or you can affect it somehow, but it has to do with big decision-making processes. And so I was like, okay, how do we challenge this home economics? And then I thought that it must be hard for the schools to to also offer this in a good way. What if someone came to the principal at the school and said, "Hey, I have an option. It won't cost you anything. The kids will have much more fun. Your teachers will have a break instead of forcing them to teach something they don't want to, and I will take care of this, and everyone will be happy in the end." And this was my challenge, and I set that as a goal to myself, and I managed to do that with the project that I was doing in Malmö at the time. And if I can do it with 2-3 schools in Malmö, I think that this can be done on a far bigger scale, and it could potentially lead to changes in the actual school curriculum. So it's just you have to be really critical, and you have to really have the balls to sort of, also as a teacher or anyone working close to these school children, to see that this doesn't reflect the reality we're living in. Why do we keep on teaching them how to make brown sauce or scones or make monthly budgets when they don't even know how to make choices so that they can survive the next year or this planet can survive 1 decade more? I think this is far more relevant than baking scones.
I'm thinking that what you do, Heather, is one way of getting schools involved. If I ask you, now I'm asking you, Krista, as a politician, I know that you have schools in the area that works with farming at the school. Is that something for the future?
I think it's definitely something for the future, because knowledge about food has to come at an early age to prepare and build up for the future, and I think that's one of the school's biggest responsibilities to fulfill. Here in Tomelilla we have a school, Brösarp School, who has been an ur- och skurskola. Try to translate that for me, please. A lot of outside activities from younger ages, and now we're working for the older students older pupils in this school, also to have a lot more farming experiences with, for example, growing outside. Not at the scale I think that Heather has, but it's a start, because in this area we have a lot of food, we have a great agriculture, and the children needs to connect to that. A bit like Tina said about getting to know your surroundings. At the same time, I have to say that I had my own I was raised 1,000 kilometers up north, where the agriculture is less, not that common. A lot of woods where I come from. So children in Skåne has actually quite a good knowledge. They have seen harvesting machines, they have seen tractors at quite a good scale. So in this area we have a good start, a good ground to work from. But I think we have to work with the thing in all of Sweden. But I'm not Prime Minister, I'm just...
I wish. Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah. And I'm thinking now we're starting to get in this question about the urban and the rural areas, which is very interesting, but we won't have time for that, because otherwise I would continue to ask about that. But I'm thinking now we're talking about educating the younger consumers or upcoming consumers. When I talk to you, Måns, I know that we talked about the lack of knowledge or competence in the farming industry and in the industry itself. Can you explain a bit more about what you thought about that? Because I think you have to have educated farmers or company owners as well, I suppose.
Yeah, and actually, I think the farmers is actually one of the groups in the food industry that has highest education level. But in general, I would see that the lack, especially from my part of the industry, the food industry, the level of competence and the level of education is way too low, which I think is one of the reasons why the food industry hasn't been able to follow the consumers in the last 50 years. No, but the restaurants has been much better in following the way of the consumer behavior, and when we're talking about sustainability and so on, in a much better way, connecting to farmers and so on. So I think that's a big key for a successful food industry and farming and way of eating, to lift up the level of education within this industry, and of course you need to do that by for me via showing interest and via showing how we are actually via showing the industry and via showing that we're actually trying to do good things. So I think that's a real key for lifting the whole industry. And as we were talking about, people are interested in food, people are interested in restaurants, but not in the industrial parts.
No. And I guess it's such a complex question, just like you said, Edith, because there are the people growing the food, there are people cooking the food, there are people eating the food, and everyone has its own relationship to food, which makes it very, very complex, I suppose. Edith?
I think one thing that really scares me in my work when I meet with municipalities and I meet with the food industry and I meet some politicians is what you were saying, the lack of knowledge. Something that really makes me fear for how are we going to reach a sustainable food system is that the people who decide and make the decisions and sort of distribute the money, they have so little knowledge of food systems. And I think that there should be more room for experts who know how food really affects us, whether it's chefs or farmers or educators or someone like me. There should be space for us in these decision-making processes, and it shouldn't. I think that it's really nice that you, as a politician, is sitting here. It's actually one of the first times in these kind of events, and I go to many of these that we actually have a politician here. So. Great, wonderful for Jamie and that you invited and that you're here, because this is often not the case. We're here talking about how important it is that our politicians and decision makers understand this, what is obvious for us, and we're all here nodding and we think that this is super important. But if we don't reach the people who make the decisions for us, then it's really, really hard, or we have a constant sort of uphill battle. It's okay to say that you don't know something, because there are so many people with so much knowledge, and those are the true inclusive, collaborative processes, not just on paper but actually happening.
Sarah, you wanted to add something?
No, I think I was a bit blown away because she made such a good point here, so I'll just rest a little.
Well, I'm afraid we're starting to run out of time. I think we could sit here for a few hours more. But I would like to try to get back to where we started and why we're here today. So, Jamie, if you could dream, and we say a culinary center at Kåseholm, where would you like to be in 10 years, if you could just kind of paint that picture for us?
I think just what you said. I think we'd like to bring both politicians and farmers together, everyone in the ecosystem together for, of course, more things like this where we actually exchange ideas and new innovation ideas are born. I think it'd be very nice to have a bit more physical infrastructure or exhibitions to look at. I think touch, taste, smell has a lot to do with memory making and learning. The simplest way I could describe it is to look at what Stone Barn Center has done in New York with Dan and David and their board of directors. And they've created an immersive environment that is so pleasurable that people repeat this experience over and over again. And it's a place that's known to be a place of learning. So I think eventually getting closer to that example would be fantastic.
What do you think is the most important thing that needs to be done, or what do you need to keep that dream living, so to say?
I mean, it's funding. Things like this are not free. People need to take time to come to them. People need to, eat something. Basic funding to continue.
Oh, we have to use this one then.
Thanks. I just want to add a few words to the discussion here. I'm Jens Weibull. I'm working for the Swedish Board of Agriculture, Jordbruksverket. I've been working on a national program called Programmet för odlad mångfald, our national program for cultivated diversity, for 20 years. I was trained as a plant breeder. I've been working for the Swedish Biodiversity Center for 13 years or something. Now I'm at the Board of Agriculture. I just want to add to what you just said, Edith, that if you read the draft biodiversity strategy that the Commission just presented in May to the EU Parliament and the Council, there's quite a lot of good stuff in there. So I think there is a change going on into another direction with the Green Deal. And I think that is on the highest political level. So things are happening. And that's one thing. The second thing I was thinking about was that within Europe we have, since 40 years, a genetic resources or gene bank community. We're just now actually formulating a draft strategy for genetic resources for the Commission. And I'm just now writing texts on how we can improve the diversity in the agrobiodiversity in cultivation. So this discussion is right upon what I'm writing now. And thirdly, I want to say that already 10 years ago, the Swedish Farmers Cooperative LRF they prepared and adopted a new policy for Swedish crop production, because they understood they couldn't, because prices were going down. Swedish farmers were producing bulk, growing for bulk production. They needed to move into what they call the blue ocean and not just to produce for the red ocean. So even I agree fully what Måns said. The Swedish farmers are extremely well educated, but we need to educate the public about this. There's so much we need to tell about the diversity that is available there, and we need to bring it out to the consumers. If you look at what gene banks are sitting on, it's a treasure. But if you look at what is being grown out there, it's just a fraction of all the diversity that is there. And we have to realize we are operating in a landscape, in a legislative landscape, which we cannot escape from. But we are trying, I tell you, we are trying to modify it and to find the ways to let this diversity out.
And I'm thinking about what you say now. With all the knowledge we have to keep going and keep learning more and work together through the knowledge from before with the knowledge in the future. I think that's the way we need to go. Well, I'm sorry to say that we're at the end of these 2 hours. Jamie, do you have any last words you want to say as the host of the place? Otherwise, I will try to wrap it up.
Let's just get ready for more of these.
Well, I'm just hoping that you found this panel and a discussion just as interesting as I did. I know we could have talked a lot longer than this.
Perhaps Måns might have something to say about the idea of collaboration and that sometimes big changes can happen quite quickly.
Yeah, actually, more or less, first time we met here, me and Jamie and Joachim, I've just pitched an idea within our company about instead of looking at ourselves just as an industrial player, we need to look at ourselves in how can we bring better food to everybody. So what we have been doing during the last couple of months is basically that we have started up from my family, from my family company, basically a cooperation platform, an innovation platform, which we call Nordmark och Vänner. So basically the name of our family, and where we basically have a vision to be able to create great food for all, as I've been speaking a bit about here before. And for us, that should include cooperation with farmers around in Sweden and with with farmers who want to actually do a change, but also with people in general who want to do a change of the whole food community and the way we're eating. So we are actually now setting up corporations with a lot of farmers around Sweden, a lot of retailers around in Sweden, a lot of as you were talking about and you were talking about before, vad heter det? Din utbildning, det heter som du pratade om tidigare. Ja, precis. In Lund and so on, to be able to find friends within everywhere for how we actually can change the food system. And this is actually then to hope with to really become friends with Joachim and Jamie here at Kåseholm, because we need a lot of friends to change, and we need a lot of friends to change the way we're eating. And that's the ambition, to invite everybody to that. And so what we've actually done, and we are very, very proud of that, this week first we launched the first line of new products under our own brand called In Season, just with raw materials directly from growers within Skåne now, to be sourced directly to local shops around in Skåne. Hopefully we'll be able to scale this up to all of Sweden, but actually to take food directly from the field to the shops as quick as possible, and that's something we're really proud of. And we see also that when we bring food so quick from the farm to the shops and to the consumers, we can take away many of the costs we have in between in the food chain. So we can actually be able to create quite great food to a quite moderate price, and that's also the full ambition. And without cooperation, we will never be able to do that.
So we're not strong by ourselves, that's the thing. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to end the discussion now. I know we can talk forever. Please, when we're finished here, use the panel. There are a lot of knowledge here. Ask about the school activities, the politicians, the farming, everything. Just try to use them or talk to them. Thank you so much, Jamie and Joachim, for letting us be here in this. It's a wonderful place for mindful place for a creative afternoon, really. And I also hope that this gave a lot input to the 55 degrees north. And I think what's happening in now, you will have to tell us.
Well, we're going to wrap up the feasibility study within the month of October. So all of September we are open for input and for opinions and criticism and anything that you have to give us, just shoot. Please put more names on the stakeholders map that you, if you think of people that we should know about. We will send out the link to this video afterwards, so you can share with colleagues, and a few questions about opportunities and challenges that we see within this subject. So that will be it. But I would also like to thank all of our wonderful panelists for
Did we have some?
Be here? Yes, we have some presents here for you. Gift back from Tomelilla, the food municipality of Sweden, so to say.
Thank you very much.
And I must say, in the defense of the decision making and politicians, we have two politicians here from Tomelilla municipality, and both of them are farmers. So that's they are very knowledgeable, and they will make good decisions on this, I'm sure of.
Yeah, I think that was the end of it. And thank you so much, all of you.
And thank you, Malin. Let's give a big hand for Malin.
Oh, thank you.